Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Bielsa Ball Podcast with me, Tommy Rocket.
And me, Jeff Edwards. Welcome.
And today we welcome a very special guest, somebody who had the honour of winning the league title with Leeds United in 1992. A very important member of that team, Mr. Jon Newsome. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. So, John, what have you been up to during lockdown? It's been a strange old time for everybody. Finding things to do was always hard. What have you been doing to keep yourself busy?
Oh, well, my background, sort of like a couple of years ago, I went back into football, working as an agent. So that's been literally shelved for the last year or so, because obviously the Premier League and the Championship are still playing. Division 1 and Division 2 are struggling, and then non-league have been null and voided and suspended, and young lads have not been playing. They've been furloughed. So yeah, work-wise, not been doing much at all really. Garden in the summer never looked as well trimmed and cut. Even though I absolutely hate gardening, I'm not green-fingered by any stretch of the imagination. And yeah, just trying to keep myself busy, really. A bit of exercise, and a lot easier when it was the summer, wasn't it? You know, I mean, these winter days and winter months are, it's really, really tough on people, and just trying to keep myself busy and active, really.
As much as you can. So you're saying that you're doing your player agent. Is there any players on your books at the moment that we know about, or any that we could keep our eye on in the future?
No, not really. Like I said, I started it a couple of years ago, so I had about 10 months, 12 months at it. I just started getting the ball rolling. I'd got like a dozen young lads on my books, and then, like I say, it just came to a halt, really. And unless you're in the established players who were obviously still moving, and it takes time to get into that environment. So yeah, just it's in its infancy at the moment, really. But obviously the handbrake's been put on it a little bit with like everybody, but with the circumstances. But I suppose I'm a bit of an optimist. Always have been. There's a lot of people a lot worse off than the likes of us, isn't there? So
Yeah, absolutely. You were saying just before we came on there that you're doing a little bit of work for LUTV as well, a little bit of punditry. How is that going for you? The one thing about that Leeds team that you played in, that we'll get to in a minute, the early 90s, quite a lot of them have gone on to do a lot of television work, even movie work for one or two of them. So you've got a little bit of a role at LUTV at the moment. Was there any plans of perhaps going on to something a little bit more extravagant, like TV work?
I
mean acting. As
no. People will probably say I've been a good actor all my life. You know what I mean? I've been impersonating a footballer, but no, I've got no plans to do anything like that, really. So yeah, like you say, I've been working on match days up at the club. Before lockdown, we were doing we do the lounges and the boxes, and talk before the game, half time, after the game. See loads of the old lads up there. A broad range of ex-players. Did a lot of work. Every match day we did was with Norman Hunter, which obviously we lost, and that was a real blow. And what a lovely guy he was. So yeah, it's nice. It's nice to get back with the lads, and it's just like old times, really. We're like, when we all get, especially Mel Sterling's in the middle of it usually. So Zico's, the man of the joker in the pack and the fun of the party, and it's like old times, really. It's like we're like little kids when we get back together. So yeah, it's all been good.
Brilliant. I've done one or two of those. What do they call them? Like the package deals where you go off. We've done it for the famous Villa match, the 1-1 draw where we gave them the goal.
Okay,
yeah. I'd brought my little lad over. He was only 6 at the time, and we were afraid in case we wouldn't get tickets. So we ended up saying, right, listen, for this one time, we'll pay for the package, because when we actually booked it, the permutations for that's the season we didn't go up. Yeah. Where that our last home game of the season, we could be promoted, we could win the league, we could be getting the trophy. That there were so many permutations, it didn't work out. that particular season, unfortunately, but we did get to see one. I think Mel Sterling done and Bobby Davidson. There's a couple of others as well. But it's worth doing it, especially if you're into the kind of nostalgia of the whole kind of.
Absolutely, yeah. And I would say, I mean, obviously I've been associated with other clubs, Leeds, Sheffield Wednesday and Norwich, and but I would say that Leeds do it. They do it right. They do give a real good package on the day, and where they're from 11:30 in the morning till 6:30, 7 o'clock for the 3 o'clock kickoff. And honestly, sometimes I leave that place and it's like a nightclub sometimes, you know what I mean? It's bouncing when we've won. And so yeah, people get the money's worth, and it's just a really enjoyable day out, you know what I mean? And you take the game in as well. And so yeah, they do it right. I will give them the dues.
Absolutely. I so miss going over to Ellen Road, because I'd probably have been there probably 5 or 6 times if things were different, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Moving on to your career, Jon, you had a really interesting career. Starting off with your boyhood club, the team that you supported as a lad, Sheffield Wednesday. You came up through their academy and finally broke into their first team, albeit a little bit brief. How did your football career get going with Sheffield Wednesday?
Yeah, well, Sheffield lad, we're playing for usual Sunday morning teams and the school and the city boys and that kind of thing. Got scouted at 12. I think back in the day you weren't allowed to sign what they called schoolboy forms, which tied you to the football club until you were 14. So 14th birthday, got a knock on the door, and it was the scout from Sheffield Wednesday with the forms in his hand, and obviously that was a big day for me. And then got my apprenticeship, which was back then was a YTS. So we actually did YTS football. So did 2 years of that. Managed to get offered a pro contract. Not long after getting my pro contract, I played. It was Ron Atkinson who was the manager, and he put me as a right back in the reserves. Played a couple of games, and he obviously liked what he saw. And I just turned 19, broke into the first team, and played sort of half a dozen first team games. Got a new contract off the back of it, and then everything seemed to stall a little bit. Really, Ron, for whatever reason, sort of like didn't include me in any of the squads, and just felt like I was cast adrift, really. So came to the end of my contract the following season, and the last game of the season, he put me in the squad. We played Oldham away on the plastic pitch, put me in the squad and played me in the game, which I thought was a bit unusual, really, seeing as he'd ignored me for sort of 18 months. And I felt like I was playing all right in that 18 months. We'd gone on and won the reserves and won the Pontins League against, big teams like Leeds and Liverpool and Man United. And so, we were doing well. We just felt like we weren't ever getting any recognition. And I just felt that last game of the season was probably a little carrot, dangling just to entice me to sign again. And he offered me a new contract. And I look back now, I was 20 years of age, and I was sat in Big Ron's office, obviously across the desk from him, and he was obviously a big, forceful character, saying to me, this is the new contract I'm going to offer you. This is the money. And I just said to him, I don't want to sign it. I don't want to sign it. I don't want to stay. I want to play football. It's not about the money. I just want to play football on a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock. And I'm not doing that here. Didn't go down too well with him. He turned a little bit sour.
Right.
Yeah. Sent me out of the office with a flea in my ear.
I bet.
And
did he explain to you why you hadn't played? Obviously, he's putting a new contract in front of you, so he's interested in you. Did he explain why you were kind of outcast for 18 months?
No, nothing at all. Nothing at all, really. Just left out in the cold, sort of like guessing what, if you were doing things right or wrong. You got the reserve team manager telling you that you were playing well and you were doing things right, and you were never getting any recognition.
Yeah, and football is a confidence game, and I suppose for a 20-year-old, you're kind of I'm sure a little bit of self-doubt might even set in there, saying, I'm playing so well, but I'm still not getting picked. So I'm sure it was a difficult time for you.
Absolutely, yeah. And also, I look back, you're a kid, aren't you? I'm 20 years of age. You think, don't get me wrong, if you'd have asked me at the time, I knew everything. Of course I did, but in reality, I didn't know anything really, and it was well before you had football agents knocking about, and I remember I went home. I was living at my parents' still, and I'd not even told my mum and dad that I was turning my contract down. So I went home and basically told them, look, I think I'm out of a job. Didn't know where I was going to go. The assistant manager was asking me to go back in and have another chat and think about it and sign. And then there was a tiny little article in the local paper, the Sheffield Star, that I'd turned my contract down. And lo and behold, the phone rang, and it was Michael Hennigan, the number 2 at Howard's number 2 at Leeds, who had been my manager in the youth team as an apprentice for sort of 18 months before Howard and Mick left to go to Leeds, you see. So, and he just said, the gaffer wants to see you in the morning up at Ellen Road. Get yourself up here. So
Leeds had just been promoted at that point. Then I'm assuming that's the.
No, Leeds had one season in the first division.
Right. So that was
fourth. I think they finished fourth. So yeah, the gaffer wants to see you in the morning, because obviously Howard was the gaffer. He was always known as the gaffer to me, sort of thing. So following morning, jumped in my car, got to be at Ellen Road for 10 o'clock or something, and drove up the road and got there at 10 o'clock. And Mick Hennigan welcomed me to the club, and the first thing he said to me was, "Where's your dad?" His words were, "Where's your father? But where's your dad?" So I said, "Well, my dad's at work." And he said, "Well, Howard, the gaffer, won't speak to you without your dad being here. He won't enter negotiations. So get your dad on the phone." So I rang my dad, and my dad was self-employed. My parents had got a shop, a post office. So he had to shoot home and put a shirt and tie on and zoom up to Leeds. And then they took us out for lunch. So my dad should have been at work, and he sat in the Hilton Hotel in Leeds eating fillet steak, and he thought it was fantastic. And we went back, and Howard just said, "I want you here. I want you in my first team by the end of next season coming. I think you're good enough, and that's what I want you to be. I want you to be pushing. I want you to be playing in the first team. I want to give you a 3-year contract." And it was music to my ears, because it was somebody I just felt like it was somebody who wanted you, and which, as you've touched on earlier, that gives you confidence. So all of a sudden you go into a football club that you think, you know what, these people, this manager actually wants me to be at the club. They're paying money for me, and that was it. I signed the contract, and we got, the year that I was in at Sheffield Wednesday, we got a really good crop of players. There was an old coach down there, a guy called Clive Baker, who's no longer with us, bless him, but a really, really top guy. And I remember many years later, when I was going through my coaching badges, he said to me that the year that I was in was the best group of players, best crop of youngsters that he'd ever had. So Howard was obviously aware of this, and he asked me who else had not signed the contracts, and there was about 4 or 5 of the lads. And he turned around to Mick Hennigan and he said, "Right, go and get the lot of them." And I was sworn to secrecy that I'd signed for Leeds, so I wasn't allowed to tell anybody. And lo and behold, 2 weeks later, it came out in the press that me and David Weatherall were going to Leeds United. And David Weatherall was the only other one that he managed to get. He was trying to get 3 or 4, maybe 5 of us. So yeah, and that's how it all came about, really.
That's brilliant. That's a great story. I didn't know that. Yeah. So obviously you're after walking into Leeds United, huge club, steeped in history. Obviously, we've had our success in the 70s, and we've just come back to the big time. A little bit similar to where we are now at the moment. Yeah. But you're walking into a dressing room with some huge characters. You had Cogman Gordon Strackens, Gary McAllister's, obviously a very young Gary Speed. We had so many David Batty, so many big personalities in that dressing room. How did they take it in? How was it getting into the atmosphere of that squad?
Well, there's a bit of a backstory to that, really, because I think it was the final reserve game of the season, the previous season. We played Leeds United, and Bobby Davison was playing up front, and I was playing against Bobby, 20-year-old kid, thinks he's a bit of a lad. Bobby's a bit longer in the tooth, been around the block. So we start having a bit of a battle, and Bobby turns around and starts putting his finger in my face and threatening me, and I'll come down in the week and I'll have you outside the players' entrance, and well, I'm like, yeah, I'll meet you, whatever you want to do, Bobby. You know what I mean? And so we're having a little bit of verbals, and then lo and behold, to me, 2 weeks later, I signed for Leeds, and I'd forgotten all about it until the day I was driving up for training, and I thought, I might get there on the first day and have a fight. You know what I mean? Which is not going to go down very well with a manager, is it? Really?
Definitely. He's only a little lad as well, Bobby, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he can still go, Bob. But I think I would have fancied my chances. But even so, you're not making the best first impression, are you? If you walk in the changing room on the first day, you start having a brawl with somebody. And I remember walking into the changing room, and I knew Gary, I knew Speedo from playing against him in the juniors and in the reserves and stuff. And as I walked through the door, Gary Speed was there, and he said, "Oh, News, come on, come and get changed next to me," sort of thing, and welcomed me in. And Bobby Davison just said to me, "Told you played well that night, didn't I, kid?" That was it. That was it. You know what I mean? And yeah, and he obviously, as the older statesman, the more mature, he'd sort of like taken ownership of the time and just said, "Yeah, I told you played well that night." And but then I also knew quite a number of the players who were there from the connection with Sheffield Wednesday. So your likes of Mel Sterland, Imre Varadi, Carl Schutt. There were a number of lads who I knew from Sheffield Wednesday as well. So and the lads were, I mean, I'd say to this day, and I probably didn't realise it at the time, but it was quite easily the best dressing room in my career, the best group of players. They were so tight, everybody, and also it was so diverse. So you got your Gordon Strachan, who was 35, 36 years of age. You've got Jon Newsome, 20-year-old, wet behind the ears, young lad, and 5-6 weeks into the season, he asked me to come out for dinner with him and his wife, and wanted to get to know me better and welcome me to the club, and and at the time you think, oh, that's nice, but I look back now as an older man and think, what a lovely gesture that was, and that's what the club was like. It was it was so together. Everybody pulling in the same direction, and it was just a fantastic dressing room to be in.
Absolutely, and it's so important to have a tight dressing room if you want to be a successful football team. If you want to be successful at anything, your workforce has got to be a tight workforce, but especially at football, your dressing room has to be pretty close. What do you put that down to? Do you put that down to just obviously it was a good mixture of players, as you say, experience mixed with the new blood coming through? Aaron, how much of that would you put down to Howard Wilkinson and how he managed that side?
Yeah, I mean, the gaffer's got to take a lot of the credit for that. And I think he's got to take a lot of credit for bringing Gordon in and Gary Mack and people like that. And you got other characters, Chrissy Fairclough, is like the silent assassin, you know what I mean? You've never seen him without a smile on his face, and, such a lovely, lovely guy, but I'd want him in my corner. You know what I mean? Nobody messed around with him, and Gordon sort of like ran the dressing room as well. He was Howard's voice in the dressing room. So there was sometimes, we come in at half time, and Gordon would be ripping people to pieces and having his say before the gaffer even said his bit. You know what I mean? It was a real mix that everybody respected everybody else. I mean, just a really, really good bunch of lads. And like you say, Howard does have to take a lot of credit to that, but also the people that he employed with him. Mick Hennigan. I've had him. I've known Mick since I was 15 years of age, and such a character, such a great guy. Got the lads laughing at times and crying at times, and him and Howard worked really well together. The good cop, bad cop sort of thing, and so yeah, it was a real, like, you hear players talk in the past about dressing rooms, but dressing rooms are a really complex place to be, because you've got a number of characters, and footballers are all. It's like going into a classroom at school. You've got 30 kids in there, you've got 30 footballers, and every one of them kids is totally different, and every one of those footballers are totally different. We're not all the same. So you've got a real mixture: quiet ones, loud ones, etc. But that dressing room really was the best that I ever played in by a mile.
Brilliant. We had Jonathan Douglas on last week. Jonathan would have captained Leeds in the mid 2000s, and we are talking about the training regimes, obviously compared to what Bielsa does now with the murder ball and all that kind of stuff that he's famous for. And we asked him what training was like back then. He said nowhere near that. If we go back just a little before that to the Harold Wilkinson days, there was all sorts of rumours about him sending you out to the Yorkshire moors and the Yorkshire dales to run up and down hills with weights on your back and stuff like that. I hear that was a rumour. Is there any truth in that? And what was training like under Howard?
Training was hard. Howard's teams. Howard was a fitness fanatic himself. So we train in the morning and do, or even when I was an apprentice at Sheffield Wednesday, the first team would train and you train as apprentices, and then in the afternoon, Howard and all his staff would go and do a 7, 8, 9 mile road run. Because they were all into it. They were all fitness. They all did loads of running, and so yeah, training was really. I know when he was at Sheffield Wednesday, when he first went in there, it was brutal. It really was brutal. But even at Leeds, that first season I was there, and we used to train up at a college up near Horsforth, one of the colleges up there, and there was a number of fields, and he was clever in how he did it, Howard, because footballers, if you give them an inch, they'll grab a mile. You know what I mean? So you do things like you do what they call minute laps. So you'd have either a cricket circle or a football pitch, and you've got to do a lap in a minute. Well, you'd have some young lad in the team or in the group who is going to get in 52, 53 seconds. So as you set off, the older lads are all shouting in his ear, telling him to slow down because you've only got to get inside 60. So if you get in at 58, 59, that's enough. And that's what most footballers are like. So what I would used to do is I would put you in teams and put a baton in your hand and say, right, we're having a race. And that was it. So suddenly that competitive edge came out. And rather than getting in 58, 59 seconds, the lads were flying in at 51, 52 seconds because you wanted to beat your mate. And, it was like the Olympics. So there was a lot of that going off. And he used to put you in groups when we do... some of them, one of them was called a fartlek run, which is a 45-minute run. So it mimicked playing a half a football match. But you never walked. So you ran for 45 minutes at all different paces. So Howard would take, the lap round, and then as he dropped out, someone else would take it, and then you'd be sprinting up the hills and then jogging back down the other side, and all these manner of things like, and you got certain groups. So you got a team in blue, and they got to be at the front. They were the best runners, and then the lads with the yellow bibs on were the middle lads. And then you got the goalkeepers and the lads who couldn't run at the back. And if you were in the front group, but you were dropping into the middle, they were screaming in your ear that you were letting everybody down. You got to get up to the front. And so it was all competition all the time. And we were a really, really fit, strong football team. You know, that I think that's one of the trademarks of Howard's teams at the time. You know, and the epitome of it all was Gordon, because Gordon was probably one of the fittest players in the squad. You know, at 35 years old, and his training regime was unparalleled. You know, the way that he looked after himself was incredible back. You know, especially back in the day.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that, because Gordon probably had some of his best football in his kind of in his golden years, so to speak, and still even went on to play for the likes of Coventry and I think somebody else after Leeds as well. So there's a lot to be said for looking after yourself back then. Again, what you're saying there kind of rings a few bells into what we're hearing about the current Leeds team, almost about being fitter than everybody else, which leads us into the famous season, and probably the most standout point of your career was the league winning title team in 91-92. What can you tell us about that season? What was it like to be a player to go and win a top flight? It's a Premier. I don't care what anybody says. They changed the name of it. It's a Premier League. It's a top title.
The last Division 1, and it's a strange season for me, really, because I'd gone in there, I'd signed for the club, and I was really, you know, anxious to make an impact, and Howard had sold me the club. I went in my first team, and then towards the end of pre-season, I got a bit of a knee problem, sort of like quite hard pain in my knee when I ran, like a burning pain. But it wasn't there all the time, so they couldn't pinpoint it. They didn't know what it was, and I ended up having some surgery on it, and that didn't rectify it. And so it was a bit frustrating for me, really. Sort of like 2 or 3 months on the sidelines, trying to get fit and thinking they diagnosed it right. And all the time the lads were winning and playing games, and you wanted to get in the team. So when my chance came, I got back fit, and I played a couple of reserve games, and I remember we played Tottenham away, and I was in the squad, and great, this is just what I've signed for, and this is the reason I've come to the football club, and the gaffer's been as good as his word. You know what I mean? He said I'm going to include you if you're fit and strong, and you're doing the stuff, and so be it. He did, and Mel Sterling was struggling with his ankle a little bit at the time. He was having jabs in his ankle to play, and it was about 10 minutes after half time, half an hour to go, and the gaffer said, "Right, get ready, you're going on." And I was like, "Wow, making my debut," and on I went. And remember, the first ball came to me, I was just a bag of nerves, really, even though I shouldn't have been. But the first ball came to me, and it was a bit of a challenge, and I just put my foot through it, and I just like gave the ball away and kicked it long, and Gordon was playing in front of me, and Gordon just turned around to me and just said, "Son, we're better than that." And I thought, that was his little word. We're better than that. And I thought, yeah, we are actually, and I need to be better than that, and
yeah.
And off we went, and then just how it happened, and we got a corner on the far side. I said to Gary Speed, where does Mel go on the corners? And he said, "Just go on a penalty spot. You're going to score. You're going to score." This ball came over, picked the flight up, bang, scored. I didn't know what to do. Speedo was jumping on my head, laughing, saying, "I can't believe you scored. I can't believe you scored." We were laughing his heads off. And that was the start of it. And then I had like a bit of a run for the last part of the season. And from my point of view, I was just absolutely delighted to be involved. Obviously, I've been watching the players, watching the lads, winning games, knew that we were having a really good season. And then so to be included in that was a real bonus for me, a boost for my confidence, a pat on the back. Really encouraged me to do that. And then I was just concentrating on really trying to do the very best job that I could do to make sure that I was in the team the following week. Probably bypassed me a little bit. Never did I start thinking, "Oh, we're going to win the league," or "We are going to," because I still felt, in all honesty, like a little bit of a bit part of that team had only just got in the side, and you know what I mean. So, but obviously I was real good pals with Speedo at the time. You know, we were really close, and he obviously Gary had played nearly every game, if not every game that season, and so you know when you're in and around the players, but nobody really talked about it. You know, we were just concentrating on winning games, and I think Howard was really good in that part of it as well, because he never put any pressure on the players. He used to talk about, at the time, I would have just taken up golf. He was mad into golf, and his analogy was always about golf. So he reckoned, well, I remember at the time that he was saying that when a golfer stood on the 18th tee in the final round of a major,
right,
he doesn't start dissecting his swing and thinking about where he's going to put the club and how he's going to hit it. He just trusts his swing. He just trusts what's got him there to play that final hole. And his analogy was the same with us. Don't start thinking, what have I got to do differently to win the next game? Carry on doing what we've been doing throughout the season, and that will see us through. And I think that was a major part of it as well. You know, I really do think it was a big part of it, because obviously on the other side of the Pennines, there was a heap of pressure on their shoulders, and I think it told in the end. And you know, we came through and finally, you know, managed to win it. So yeah, just an unbelievable experience. And then obviously the final, or the day we won it at Bramall Lane.
I remember it well.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I was eight years old, John, when that happened. And that'll never leave me. Like my own son, he's turning 8 this year, you know, and I do be telling him about that, remembering the day that Leeds won the Premier League to him, you know. And much to me confession, we're going to get to it in a second. Can't believe I'm telling you this, but I actually had a poster of you over the bedroom.
All right.
Bedroom. Do you know the tumble after the goal?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you in midair in the tumble. I think it was in like the Shoot or the Match magazine.
Brilliant.
One of those magazines at the time, yeah. But so that leads us on to that Sheffield United match, and again, it's a game I remember vividly.
Yeah.
You didn't get many goals in your career, John, and I suppose you got that one against Tottenham that we spoke about, which was your first game. I didn't realise that was your debut.
Yeah, for Leeds. Yeah.
So you really know when to pick them, because.
Well, I think I'd actually played. I think I'd come on sub in the Simod Cup or something, like a couple of weeks before. You know what I mean? I think that was my league. Yeah, my league debut. Yeah.
Unbelievable. So that Sheffield United match was a bizarre game.
Crazy.
So many.
Craziest game of football ever.
And the goals that went in, there must be the craziest consecutive goals ever in an English top flight game. Anything from the one bouncing off Rod Wallace to one going in off Lee Chapman. But the one that's going to stand out for you, obviously, is that famous one where they came over everybody, the keeper missed it, and there you were at the back post, almost doing a roll as you headed it in and off the pitch. What do you remember of that goal?
I remember we got a free kick out on the far side, and we did a lot of set pieces with Howard. Set pieces were a big part of Howard's game. You know, you can win and lose games on set pieces. You can work on, you know, your outfield play, playing from the back, like Bielsa does at the moment. We play fantastic football, but we've got this little bit of a Achilles heel on set pieces, haven't we? And we can, you know, the current side can play 89.5 minutes of fantastic football and get done by a sucker punch in the last minute on a corner. So Howard spent a lot of time on stuff like that. And one of the things, and I still look at it to this day, is he used to say, don't let the ball go out the back door. So when there's a cross, you know, there's a cross from that side.
Don't let it go over everybody.
How many times you see the ball get crossed in and everybody gets sucked in under the ball and it goes out the back post. And you just think, well, if somebody was round that back post, they're keeping that ball alive. They might not score, but they're keeping that ball alive and they're putting it back into a dangerous area. And that was one of his philosophies about getting around the back post. So on that day, that was my job. My job was get around the back post. And let me tell you, if that ball had gone out of the back post and I'd not been on the end of it, I'd have been getting a right bollocking. You know what I mean? My ears would have been bleeding. Let me tell you. So that was my job. You know, and I just remember a bit like the Tottenham goal that you sort of picked the flight of the ball up early, and I just thought, that's mine. That's mine. That, and obviously I'm a centre half, and you know I'm quite good at heading the ball, and probably trusted my head more than I trusted my right foot on a volley. In all honesty, so as it came over, I just followed it, and as it dropped, you know, diving header. We've done millions of them in training. You know, best goal wins a Mars bar and that kind of stuff, and so it, you know, and it went, and as soon as it sort of like left my head, I knew it was going to be a goal. And the previous game, or the previous goal what I scored against Tottenham, I remember watching it back that night on Match of the Day, and my face was stern. My face was like thunder. I didn't know how to celebrate. I actually said to myself, the next time I score a goal, I'm going to make sure I smile. You know, I make sure I look like I enjoy it. Well, as you've probably seen, I'm like a Cheshire cat after I've scored that goal. You know, I've got a smile from ear to ear. What makes it even more sweeter is that obviously I'm a Sheffield lad. I was a Sheffield Wednesday supporter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Scoring against the arch rivals. You know, some of my family was sat on the cop, ready to give me dog's abuse, and then realised it was me and couldn't really say anything. So
brilliant.
Yeah, and just a crazy game, crazy day of football, really. And then again, we kicked off at 12 or 12:30. Man United played Liverpool at 3. That would never happen again today. Time, that kind of stuff. So, you know, Gailey scored the own goal. You know, it was written. We got to win the game, hadn't we? You know what I mean? It was there, and the final whistle went, and we were all like, "We've done our bit. We've done our bit now. It's over to Manchester United and see what they can do." And we had a couple of beers after the game in the players' lounge. And then me and Gary Speed actually went back to my parents in Sheffield, and we sat and watched the Liverpool Man U game.
Just the two of us?
Yeah, just the two of us with my mum and dad, yeah.
We know that the famous video of Cantona and Chapman who was sat on the couch, you know.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, just you and Speedo are in your mum and dad's house watching the game. So go on, tell us all about that. What was it like?
Yeah, just watching the game, and obviously Gary had got that Welsh connection. So Gary was in the Welsh squad, and I think I'm right in saying that Ian Rush scored, and it was the first time in something like 16 or 18 games. It was the first goal he'd ever scored against Manchester United. He'd never scored against Man United before, and we were like, "That's another omen." You know, because you look for these things, don't you? When you want,
looking for anything.
It's got to be, and obviously they went on and they won the game, and then mobile phones had just started coming out. Really, a couple of lads had started getting mobile phones. And
that's what it is.
There were a couple of big bricks, but there were a couple of more modern ones, and that was it. The phones rang, and it was like, right, where we're meeting in Leeds, so. Me and Gaz jumped in the car and shot back up to Leeds. We lived near each other at the time, got changed, and we met a few more of the lads, and we had a bit of a celebratory night.
Brilliant. So when the final whistle went in the other game, in Man United Liverpool game, the cameras on the other boys now, and that's all us fans have to reference as to where any Leeds player was at that particular time, and they pretty much just sat like that. Lads, you just won the league. Yeah. What was you and Gary Speed like? Were you jumping around the place, or were you exactly the same as them?
Well, I think I don't. We weren't sat morbid on the settee like the rest of the lads. We were up and like laughing and like shaking hands, and I think we had a glass of fizz or something, and but I'd got a drive, you know what I mean? So it was like, come on, let's get back to Leeds, because it's not like we were going to go out in Sheffield, because we'd have got undrawn and quartered, you know what I mean? So so we were straight in the car and wham, straight back up to Leeds, and let's get out as quickly as we can. So yeah, that I think that was the only thing on our minds, really. And obviously we then got another game. We got Norwich City the following Saturday. So but the club were good. They were great. They were like, look, it's an amazing event. We know you're going to celebrate. Just be professional. From Wednesday night, Thursday, be right. Stay off the booze. Stay.
Was there anything like stand out funny that we don't know about that happened that night? Because obviously we're after winning the league, and like you say, there's some older guys, there's some younger guys in the squad, and I know any football team I've ever played in, there's always one nutcase that's gonna run down the street naked or something. Was there anything like that?
Nothing like that, really. We ended up. We all met. There was about, not all of us. There's about 8 of us, I think. There's about eight or 9 of us met up in North Leeds at a restaurant called the Flying Pizza, and we walked in the Flying Pizza. And Eric was with us. Eric was a bit of a legend at the time, wasn't he? So we walked in, and the whole restaurant erupted, and they'd saved us a table, and so we were in there having drinks. There was photographs, and then I think somebody from the national papers, some photographer came in, and then at one minute Eric was stood on his chair, and they were all singing "Ooh, ah, Cantona" in the restaurant, and this kind of stuff. And then that finished, and then there was one of the big supporters who was there, and he'd invited us back to his big house with a swimming pool, and the party carried on back there, and we were diving in the pool and all that all manner of stuff. And yeah, it just seemed to go on and on and on, really. And following morning, a couple of sore heads, but then we were back in training on the Monday, and don't get me wrong, we had a few beers, me and Gaz. I think we lived on Budweiser, champagne, and pizza for about 4 days, I think.
Sounds like a good diet to me.
yeah, exactly. And we played the Norwich game, and I remember coming off after the Norwich game, and we beat them 1-0, and we'd had the presentation of the trophy, etc., etc. And Mick Hennigan said to me, "I've never seen a player lose 2 yards of pace in a week."
Oh, quality. But come here, the job was done by then.
Exactly, we'd done it. So they were okay about it. But yeah, we'd given the ball a kick, definitely.
Absolutely. You've touched on a couple of players that I'd really like to talk to you about. The good, the bad, and the ugly, as far as the transfers are concerned. Eric Cantona would have been a teammate for you for half a season, more or less. What was he like in the dressing room? Was he quiet? Was he mad? Was he what you seen on the pitch?
No, he was all right, Eric. You know what I mean? He was like one of the boys, really. If we were going out for a beer, which we did, we could do that back then. You know what I mean? Our was quite strict. I think our limit was something like 11 o'clock on a Wednesday night or something. So if we not got a midweek game, we could go out for a couple of beers on a Tuesday or even a Wednesday, and Eric would come and join us. He'd join in with the boys. Fit, strong, proper athlete, trained really well. Deep character, very deep character, but everybody knows that by now anyway.
Yeah.
But no, he joined in. He was one of the boys, and thoroughly nice guy. Nobody had an issue with him. The time when it was time for him to leave, he'd had a fallout with the manager, with Howard. Him and Howard had locked horns, really, and it was a bit of a battle of the wills, I think.
In what sense? Was it just kind of a mental battle that they had? There was no.
Yeah.
Was there ever any truth in some of the other rumours that was floating around as to about why he left?
No, not at all. Not at all. There was a he wasn't getting picked. He was sub for games, and he was coming on as sub and that kind of thing. And Eric didn't like that, and most players wouldn't at his age. You know what I mean? You want to play. So we played QPR away, and we were training on the. I think it was the Thursday. I think we were training on the Thursday and travelling on the Friday, and Howard had named the team on the Thursday, and Eric wasn't playing, so he was a sub. So we 10 minutes, 20 minutes into training, he said, "Oh, I've got a bit of a thigh strain, pull my thigh." So Howard was like, "Right, in you go." So after the training, Howard went up to the physio room, said to Alan Sutton, "What's wrong with Eric?" And he was like, I don't know what you're on about. I've not even seen him. And Eric had come in, got a shower, got in his car and gone home when you're supposed to go to the physio, get ice on your injury, etc. So there was a bit of argy-bargy, bit of a to and fro. And we went down. We did we trained on the Friday. Eric travelled with us. We did set pieces on the Saturday morning. So what Howard used to do, he wasn't too keen on the lads just laying in bed all morning on a Saturday before the game. He liked us to get up and go for a walk, get some fresh air. And most of the lads would do that anyway. But so we'd get his kit on and we'd go and do some set pieces, just have a little five-a-side, little kickabout in the morning, have a shower. And the rules were that you got a designated time, so 1:30 or let's say 1 o'clock in this conference room. That's the team meeting. Make sure you've paid your hotel room bill for any extras that you've had, and you're in the room for 1 o'clock. Club shirt, tie, blazer, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So you're there for 5 to 1 because you can't be late. Because if you're late, you might not play. You might get fined or so. It's 1 o'clock and we're all sat there waiting, and there's one person who's not there, and it gets to 1:05 and 1:10, and at the time Eric was sharing rooms with Lee Chapman, so he says to Chappie, where is he? And Chappie's like, well, he knows what time it is, Gaffer. He knows it's 1 o'clock. So at this time, the steam's coming out of the Gaffer's ears, and it gets to about 1:15, and the door opens. And in walks Eric with a pair of jeans on, a white T-shirt and a blazer jacket. And we're all like, oh dear, here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah, and he sat down and the gaffer starts doing his talk, his pre-match talk, and Eric's just like looking out the window, just completely ignoring him. So the gaffer pulled him and they had a few words and he just said, right, get your stuff and go. I think he planned. He was, because we were at QPR. He was going straight to the airport and flying back to France for a few days or something. And the gaffer had got his passport and he just went, take that and do one. And off he went. Yeah, and he picked his stuff up, and as he walked back down, he just said, bye boys, and out he went. And we just thought, we'll see him Tuesday, Wednesday or whatever. And came in on the Monday and we were training, and by the time we'd finished training, it was all round the ground that the club that they'd sold him to Man United. And that was it.
I remember that moment. It was back in the day, Sky Sports was pretty new, and they had the Sky Sports News. It was just on once a day at 6 o'clock. And that was the headline story. Cantona had signed for Man, and however he signed for it, he was gone. But the fact that he'd gone to Man United as well, as a Leeds fan, it was just a major kick in the teeth. Eric was a smashing player, but you don't go there from a fan's perspective. But obviously, he had no allegiance to us. He'd only finished the season. Now, Jeff actually has one of the social media questions, and that was aimed at Eric Cantona. I think about one of the rumours. What was that, Jeff?
Gary from our page asks, was it true that Eric Cantona had Leeds United tattoo on his neck? That's why he always wore his collar up.
Not what I know.
There's so
I tell you what, it's amazing where these rumours come from. You know.
I know.
A lot of it's probably bollocks, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Where do you fans get information from?
That's a nice way of putting it, really. No, I don't think Eric. I don't think Eric had any tattoos.
No, there was loads of rumours about Cantona at the time. You know, as it happens all the time. No matter what happens in football, somebody's in the public eye. Obviously, they're going to be there's going to be rumours about them, especially when they leave. So another one of the players, and you've brought him up quite a number of times during the conversation. He was obviously somebody who was a close friend to you, and again, one of our favourites, Gary Speed. I hadn't been to Ellen Road in probably about 5 years, just the way things worked out financially and stuff like that. And I managed to get over to Ellen Road. We were playing Barnsley at home. We got beat 2-1, and I was there with the missus. It was her first time in Leeds, and her brother coincidentally lives in Sheffield.
Okay.
So we met them. Him and his missus, they drove up to Leeds, and we were going out for a meal. We weren't flying back till the following Monday, whatever it was. We spent 3 nights there, and my dad rang. So that's unusual. He's ringing me because the cost of the call from the UK to Ireland. Let's see, something's wrong here. What's going on? And he said, "Did you hear the news?" He says, "What news?" And he said, "Gary Speed died." And at first, my first initial reaction was, "Is there 2 Gary Speeds? Who's the other Gary Speed?" Because I automatically just couldn't fathom because I watched him on Soccer Saturday the day before.
Yeah.
I said, "Are you sure?" Yeah. And I burst into tears. I couldn't hold it in. Needless to say, there was a lot of tears shed over that week from me personally. I was a big Leeds fan. A memory, just to go back a few years of a memory of you and Gary Speed. Leeds had come over to play a pre-season friendly against Shelbourne, as they did quite a lot back then.
Yeah.
And we were standing outside, the team bus was pulled up outside the small stadium, Tulka Park, and it turned out my dad knew the bus driver.
Okay.
Whoever it was, my dad, he knows everyone. Anyway, he says to any chance of getting the kid on the bus? I was only 8. So I got on the bus, and John Lugage and Gary McAllister, Mel Stair, they were all there, the whole team. I thought I was in heaven. And I went down to the back of the bus, and my lasting memory was the 2 of you was sitting down the back of the bus. And the 2, I don't know what you were doing, but you were messing. And I walked up, 8 years old, walked up with me pen and me paper. Can I get an autograph? And the 2 of you were lovely. You sat me down on the chair beside you, and you signed the autograph. And I stood up, and I was like, oh, this is unbelievable. And I went down, and I sat beside, I think it was John McClelland.
Okay. Yeah.
And I sat beside John McClelland, and I was sitting beside him, and he was talking to me. So I'm sitting beside him talking on the bus. Next of all, the bus starts moving. Now, my mom, my dad, and my sister are across the road. And the bus takes off down, it's called Richmond Road, obviously on the way to the airport or wherever it was going. And I remember sitting there going, the bus is moving. And I had this vision in my head. And I thought, Leeds are going to bring me back like Tarzan, and they're going to raise me. They're going to put me in the academy and raise. I'll play for Leeds, and I had no problem with that bus moving and not stopping. And I remember my mom. I see my mom running. She's like Gordon Strachan running down the pathway trying to catch up with the bus. And anyway, the bus driver realised that I was actually 2 of us on the bus, another kid, and the bus pulled up. It felt like we drove for about 10 miles, but it was probably about 10 yards.
Brilliant.
And we got off the bus. And I remember getting off, going, oh, I was so disappointed. But that memory of you and Gary Speed sitting on the back of the bus kind of stayed with me for a long time. I think David Batty was there as well. I think it was the 3 of us.
Oh yeah, probably so.
So when I got that phone call in Leeds that day, that Gary had passed away, it was it kind of hit me hard as a fan, as it did many fans. But I couldn't imagine how somebody who was a close friend like yourself felt. What's I don't mean to bring up bad memories or anything, but he was one of your buddies. What?
Yeah, I mean, tough time. I mean, we were really close when I was at Leeds. We stayed in touch. But we sort of like lost touch a little bit, really. Gary's career had gone on, and magnificent career, and played games, and I'd gone down to Norwich, so I was a long way away, and then I finished with an injury, and he just he'd come back to Sheffield United. He was playing at Sheffield United. He just got the manager's job before he was going to go and do the Welsh job, and I bumped into him a couple of times in Sheffield, and like filling the car up with fuel or something, and we were like, oh, come on, we've got to get together and go and have a beer, and we said we would do, and things run away with you, and we never got around to it, and then that was, I heard about it. It was the Sunday, wasn't it? I was playing golf. I was playing golf at the golf club which I lived close by, and I was walking down the 18th fairway, and I could hear my phone like buzzing in my bike because I got it on silent, but it kept buzzing and ringing, and I thought something happening here. So I looked at it, and I got about 4 or 5 missed calls from one of my friends, who many years ago when I was in Leeds, he was a goalkeeper, and he'd come to Leeds and been out with me and Gary, and so I answered the phone. Said, what's up, big man? And he was like, have you heard the news? I said, no, what's happened? And he told me the news. I was like, joking? He's like, no. So then I'm walking down the fairway thinking, wonder what's happened. It's got to be like a car accident or, some tragedy, you know what I mean? There was nothing come out. It was just that he died, he passed away. So I remember coming home, and I got my kids. My kids were with me that weekend, and I got the TV on, and it was just constant Sky Sports news, just going round and round and round. And my phone was ringing, and I was trying to speak to a few people, and just all a bit of a daze, really. The day. I suppose one of those days where you get to the end of it and you scratch your head, and you don't really know how time's elapsed, and you can't get your head around the situation, and just a horrifically sad situation, really. Culminated in his funeral, which was again a devastating day where you see so many people that and so many faces, and just tragic day, really.
Yeah, it was ironic. I was in Leeds that day for the first time in a few years, and you could feel the whole the city deflating. The whole atmosphere in the city changed. It was quite eerie, and obviously we weren't flying back till the following day, the Monday, and we went down to Elland Road, and the flowers had started around the Billy Bremner statue, and I you'll see the photograph still now. There's a big Ireland flag tied around Billy Bremner's leg that I bought the day before. The day of the match, I bought the retro 92 jersey, which I still have upstairs, and I got 11 speed on the back of it. Would you believe? Yeah. It's just so many things happened that weekend.
He was a legend. You know what? He was a legend, and I remember we were sat having a conversation, we were chatting one day, and he went, "You know what? I'm going to grow my hair." I was like, "What?" Well, yeah, I'm going to grow my hair, and he did, didn't he? And he got this like
the mop. Yeah,
infamous, wasn't he? He was like, he was a great lad, great guy.
Yeah. Well, God rest him. I suppose we better try to wrap things up. I could talk to you all day, John. Your career went on for another couple of years at Leeds, and we had that season where we finished 17th after we won the league, and then we kind of steadied the ship a little bit more, finishing higher up the table in 5th. Then your Leeds career came to an end. What exactly happened there?
Well, got to the end of the season. I just signed a new contract the year before, so everything was going all right for me, I thought. And then I got a phone call off a reporter, a newspaper reporter, and he just said, "I know players are usually the last to to get to hear about these things. But I just thought I'd let you know that Norwich City have made a bid for you and Leeds have accepted it. He said, don't say anything, don't do anything about it, but I just thought I'd put you in the picture. So I was like, right, okay. Thought I'd hear something, that day or the following day, or everything seemed to go quiet and I didn't hear anything. And then 2 weeks after the phone call, I came home and I got an answer machine message from Howard's secretary just saying, the gaffer wants, Howard wants to see you down at the ground. If you could give me a call back. So I rang back and said, yeah, I'll come down now. And went down to see him. And he just said, look, I'm signing another player. He's going to play instead of you. We've accepted a bid for you. You've been great for me, but, do you want to go and have talks with Norwich City? So I was like, well, if you're bringing somebody else in and it's basically telling me my time's up, aren't you? So, if your time's up, your time's up, sort of thing. That's the way football is, and that was it. Off I went, And the following day, I went down to Norwich, had talks. Really, really liked what I saw. Again, a club that really rolled the red carpet out for me, made me feel really wanted, and off I went down there and thoroughly enjoyed my time down there. Played probably my best football down there, really.
Absolutely. I think you're a club captain. Who was the manager then? Was it
John Dean?
Ah, right. I was trying to think of that earlier on during the conversation.
Nixon was his number 2. So he was manager up until about end of January, February, I think. And then Gary Mason took over. We ended up getting relegated that season, which was crazy because I think at Christmas we were 6th. Yeah. 6th. Yeah. But the club was, unbeknownst to us, they were in financial problems. So they ended up selling three of the strikers in that season, and so we struggled a little bit. And then Martin O'Neill came in the following season, and we had him for a few months. And then then he went to Leicester. Gary Mason took over again, and then I got the call to say that. I'd been told that there were a few clubs interested in me. I think Spurs and Villa, Sheffield Wednesday. But the chairman at Norwich was trying to hold out to try and get as much money as he can because the club was skint, really. And in the end, I ended up coming up and signing for Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah, so back at your boyhood club again.
Yeah.
A little bit more successful this time. You played 54 times and you scored a few goals as well. And then ultimately you ended up at Bolton on loan. And that was kind of the end of the Jon Newsome story on the pitch. What brought everything to a halt at the end? Was it just injuries or was it just...
I got a bad injury with an ankle. I dislocated my ankle in end of 97, 98. And that took quite a while to get back from because it was diagnosed incorrectly and blah, blah, blah. And so I got back fit. And then I was sort of caught between a rock and a hard place, really. Danny Wilson was the manager. He wouldn't play me in reserve games because he said, I don't want you to get injured because you're part of my first team squad. So but I don't play. You don't play me. I'm sub every week. I'm 27, 20. I'm 28 years of age. I need to be go out and playing, and that's why it ended up that I went to Bolton on loan for a month, just to go out and get some football and get some games, and did really well at Bolton. They wanted to sign me. Got back to Sheffield Wednesday. They wouldn't sell me. Then at the end of the season, Birmingham City came in for me. Trevor Francis was at Birmingham City. I was literally just jumping in the car to drive down to Birmingham City to have talks. And then I got a call to say that had fallen through because the club were being a bit silly about what they wanted out of it and blah, blah, blah. And it was just like that. It was just like one thing after another, really. Started the following season, and at that time, I was a centre back. I was a central defender. That's where I played my best football. And Danny Wilson kept chucking me in at right back, and he just got to the point where I just said, "Look, it's either you play me at centre back or I leave. I'm not going to like fall out with you about it. But if you don't see me as your first choice centre back, let me go and play football. I'm 29 years of age. You know what I mean?" We had a few crosswords and a few things happened in training, and we played Newcastle away. I wasn't playing, and he named the team at 2:00, and I was playing right back, and I was like, I can't believe this has happened, really. And then, unfortunately, during that game, I got a whack on my knee, which I finished the game, but I thought, the diagnosis was you're going to be out for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, that kind of thing. And that was it. Never played football again. I got an injury to my knee, which was worse than what we first expected it to be. And that just dragged on. And the following March, I had either my second or third lots of surgery on it. And the surgeon just said, "You're not going to play football again." Simple as that. So that was it.
Yeah. Up until I start doing a bit of I didn't realise you were only 29 when you retired.
Yeah.
Through that bad injury.
Yeah, 29. Yeah. And then the club was in. The club was in a bad situation. Sheffield Wednesday at the time were in a bad situation. So where you'd think you've been a kid coming up through their ranks and you've come back and you've played for them and you've got injured for them and and then things went off between the club and the way that they treated me when I finished, that leaves a bit of taste in your mouth, really. And you end up calling out with the game a little bit, really. But that's water under the bridge now, and it is what it is like.
Big time. Sheffield Wednesday obviously went through a bit of turmoil then after that, and they ended up down in League One. Funnily enough, a former teammate of mine got the winner in the playoff final to send us back up again to the Championship. Glenn Whelan.
Okay,
yeah. Glenn, but my dad was Glenn's coach all the way up through Irish soccer, until he signed for Manchester City. Then he went to Wednesday after that.
Yeah. He's had a great career, hasn't
he? He had a great career. Yeah, got nearly 100 caps for Ireland as well. The kind of player he whatever job you needed doing as a manager, he went in, he done it. That's the kind of player it was. So we need to kind of wrap it up. It's going, and I could talk to you all day. There's even about 50 questions I haven't got to yet. I want to touch on the Marcelo Bielsa era of Leeds, but Jeff has a question that he wants to ask you.
Who was your favourite back four to play with over your career out of any of your teams?
My favourite back four, what, individually or as an actual unit?
Yeah, as an actual unit type of thing.
Well, it'd have to be the title-winning back four, really. So, I loved it when I was playing right back, but Chrissy Fairclough, Chrissy White, and Tony DeRigo. You're playing alongside those three lads. You're not going to go far wrong, are you?
No. Brilliant.
Yeah, they were. But more so, even so, when I went. Probably the year, the couple of seasons after, when Gary Kelly came in, started playing at right back, and I moved into centre back alongside Chrissy White and Tony DeRigo, and so yeah, love my time at Leeds and playing in front of that Leeds crowd in that big stadium, and it's.
You actually played for Leeds in an era. Well, we're struggling at the moment for centre backs. You might fancy getting your boots back out. But like you say, there was Chris White, Chris Fairclough, John McClellan, David Weatherall, Tony DeRigo, Mel Sterling. Like, what a bunch of absolute legends of defenders. And so to get in and to play amongst them, I say was something positive to take into your career as you went forward. So we need to touch on the Bielsa era of things. And like I say, Diego Llorente limping off after 8 minutes, only a second appearance after spending the guts of 30 million on him. You were saying before we went on air that you've seen the majority, probably all of Leeds games so far this season. Obviously, Bielsa's a character. He has his methods. He believes in them, and he's not going to change it for anybody. And he's right not to. Well, what do you think of the whole Leeds era under Marcelo Bielsa?
I love it. I think it's fantastic. I think one of the things that I really love about the guy is that I listened to it was the Derby game when we got promotion last season. The final game of the season down at Pride Park at Derby, and Adam Forshaw was commentating on LUTV. And during the game, he was saying that they do as much work in the classroom with a pen and paper, looking at the game and articulating about the game and studying it, than they do actually on the pitch. So, what I love about Marcelo Bielsa is the fact that he improves every player that he has under his tenure. You know, you go and work under Marcelo Bielsa and you will become a better footballer. And that, to me, is what a coach and a football manager's job is, to improve your players. And that's what he does. And that's what I love about him. Every one of them understands the game far better than they did before he arrived. And you can see that. Well, you could see that in his first season that he came. You know, he turned mid-table.
First game.
Yeah.
First game he took, that Stoke game. You could just see Stoke. The same team we had last season.
Yeah. You know? How was that game?
So, to me, and then you look into his methods, and don't get me wrong. I mean, listen, who am I to say, you know, what they do right or wrong? You know, he's the maestro, isn't he? He's the man.
Absolutely.
You know, when you've got Guardiola and people like that who bow to him, then it's a different story. But you know, I do think that we've quite possibly changed the way we played a little bit this season to last. I think we managed the game better than we did last season. You know, you've got to look at the Cardiff game last season. We're 3-1 up with 20 minutes to go, and at one point we've got two centre backs doing overlaps down the wings, and we're leaving it 2v2 at the back. And I think we wised up a little bit to that, and I think we managed the game far better than we did. And I love watching it. I just love watching. I love his methods and his stance and the way that he goes about the game. Of, you know, we try and win every football match that we're playing. And it's a joy to watch. The lads who I work with on match days, the ex-players, we all love it. It's a great place to be around. The atmosphere is fantastic. Listen, you can watch a game and it's easy to sit after a game and pick points out where we've made mistakes and done things wrong. But that's a game of football, you know. I love it. I think he's been a breath of fresh air. But I also think that there's a lot of credit got to be given to the backroom staff in terms of Andrea Razzani, Victor Orta, you know, all the hierarchy in the club who have now formulated or had a plan and are working to that plan, and it's working and it's coming off. But that they had the foresight to employ Marcelo, and he's not come cheap. You know, it's a massive investment. But it's paid off in many senses. It's almost a perfect storm. You know, we went through 16, maybe even a couple of years before we went down. So the best part of 20 years of pure misery. Going to be honest with you, you know, Leeds United going down to League One, having all sorts of crooks coming in and owning us and buying us, selling players. Every time you had somebody coming through with a little bit of potential, they were sold off. Yeah. And it was pretty miserable. It was kind of hard to be a Leeds fan. But being Leeds fans that we are, you know, we were still there. We were still singing, marching on together and all that. So it's almost like the reward for so much disappointment is all kind of coming at once in the last few years. Saying you've seen Leeds and you say there's so much to talk about after games. I have my theory. I know Jeff has his theory. Where do you think Leeds need to strengthen at the moment in order to move forward? At the moment, we look kind of suited to 12th place. We look like a team that is capable of winning games and losing games.
Where would you strengthen Leeds if you were in charge at this moment in time of player recruitment in January?
I think we did a Zoom call before the Newcastle game the other night, and Victor Orta actually came on the Zoom call, and one of the hosts said to him, "Oh, you know, are you getting your checkbook out in January?" and blah blah blah, and the biggest point that he came across, and I thought it was fantastic, and I fully agree with it, was that it's about taking baby steps. It's about consolidating and not going and doing a Fulham of 2 years ago, you know, going and spending a load of cash and hoping that you just buy international players or big name players and they will fit into the mould. And Marcello won't allow that to happen. We know that. And I just think that the club has got a plan and they're working to that plan. And I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't actually sign anybody in January. Because the point I made was, if you look at last January, we signed, what was it, the big striker, didn't we, from Belgium, Big Kev.
Augustin, yeah.
And what impact did he have?
No,
he wasn't fit. He wasn't fit enough for Marcello. He needed to train for 2 months. He pulled his hamstring and blah, and it was a bit of a disaster. And I think the club might learn the lesson from that a little bit and say, you know what? Do we need to go and spend and sign a big ticket number, a big ticket player, just to say we've spent a load of money in January? You know, we're keeping up with the Joneses. We're not the Joneses.
That's a really fair point. That's a really fair point.
We're not the Joneses. Yeah. We're not the Joneses. We're not trying to be anybody else. Leeds are Leeds, and they've got an individual characteristic about the whole club and the setup. It's one of the best. It's one of the nicest places to go as an ex-player. The way that they look after you, the way they welcome you back, the way that they look after the supporters, some of the stuff they do off the pitch, the way that they commit to the community. For me, they're getting lots and lots of things right about that football club. And when Victor said that the other day, and he was like, you know, it's about sustainability. It's about making sure we finish, let's say we finish 12th this year. If we finish 12th next year, that's not failure. You know, that's not failure, because if you want to get into the top 4, you're looking at a 4 or 5 year plan. You know, at the early.
It's a building process, essentially. You know, every season we stay up, even if it's 12th again next season, as you say, even if it's 17th and we don't go down, we're still getting that input of 200 million in. We can buy 1 or 2 players with that, invest the rest around the club. So yeah, it's a great business plan. And it's great to see somebody not diving in. We've seen it with Ridsdale, where he dived in, loaned, and the ship sank very quickly. So it's good to see somebody in that's kind of business smart.
And you know, if there's one place you can spend and waste money, it's football. You know, if you look at the guy who's in charge of Sheffield Wednesday at the moment. You know, I think he's nigh on 200 million quid in now in 5 years, and they're teetering on Division 1. So if you want to really waste a lot of money, buy a football club, employ somebody who doesn't know what they're doing or has not got a strategy or a plan, and they'll flush millions of pounds down the toilet. And I think the fact that Leeds have echoed that and have pointed that out and said, you know, it's about sustainability, it's about having a plan, it's about the next goal. The first goal for Leeds is to stay in the Premier League. Simple as that.
100%.
Stay in the Premier League, which I believe they will do, and I hope they do. Next season is, can we build on that? Could we sneak into a top 10 finish? You know, if everything's going really, really well, could you sneak into Europe, get some kind of European football? You know, in the next 2 or 3 years. But it's not about going and spending, 100 million quid. It's about bringing the right players in, what Bielsa can work with, and they've got that blueprint, and hopefully keeping hold of Bielsa. That's the other thing.
Well, that's probably the most important ingredient.
What I believe he's spent more time at Leeds United than he has at any other club. Yeah. I think his stay at Ellen Road is the longest he's ever been at a football club. So if you look at that, we need to keep hold of him at the end of this season and build from that. So, there's a lot of things what go on behind the scenes, and I think those guys have got to take a lot of credit for that, because the club's what I can see, the club's in a very, very good position right now.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, John. Like I said earlier a couple of times, I could talk to you all day. It's such an easy conversation to have. I'd just like to thank you for coming on the show. It's great catching up after 30 years on our expedition down the back of the Leeds coach out in Dublin. I hope maybe one day we get to catch up in real life and all the craziness in the outside world calms down. Until then, I'd like to wish your wife and your son a happy birthday. I know there was a big birthday day in your house last night. Was that right?
It was, yeah. My son's here. It's my girlfriend, actually, not my wife. But yeah,
right, okay.
Yeah, my partner. It's her birthday and my son's birthday on the same day. So yeah, it was a bit of a not a celebrate, not a party, because you're not allowed to have one, are you? But we had a dinner and we had a quick drink, and yeah, it was just I was making dinner for them all, so I was a bit busy yesterday. But no, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure coming onto the podcast, speaking to you, catching up again. Great, I love that story about when you were 8 on the coach. That's fantastic. That really,
that's my party piece. That's when we meet with the Leeds fan. That's my party piece.
Well, I love that. And like I say, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you ever so much for welcoming me on. And hopefully when we come out the other side of it, when you're at Ellen Road, give me a shout and we'll meet up and we'll have a beer.
Absolutely. Sure. John, it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much from me, Tommy, and from Jeff as well.
Thanks, Tommy. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right.
Thank you, John.
Stay safe and we see you soon, John. Hope Sheffield Wednesday stay up for you.
Yeah, cheers, mate. No worries. Thank you. You take care.
MOT.
Hey, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And we cut there.